Ouija boards. Currently manufactured by Hasbro, it is loved by kids at sleepovers all over the world. And since it is such a popular pastime, a lot of stories have popped up online of people supposedly contacting a spirit. But there are some stories that share a strange connection to a name of a supposed demon that haunts the Ouija board. And that name is Zozo. So my first experience with the Ouija board was around 2010. I was at a sleepover with some friends, and what do girls do at sleepovers? Try to contact the dead, obviously. And it wasn't your stereotypical Ouija board. No, we took a piece of printer paper and we wrote the letters in pencil, and then we took an empty shot glass and we used that as our planchette. Yeah, it was jank. And yeah, I had to call my mom to come pick me up because I was scared, but that's besides the point. I tried to use Ouija boards a bunch of times after that experience, and I never had anything like Zozo come up. But I did see Zozo coming up online and on TV, specifically on Ghost Adventures. I swear, anytime I do research for a video or like on a video topic, Zach Bagans is just somehow involved. It always comes back to Zach. An episode of Ghost Adventures airs in 2014 called Zozo Demon, and it starts with Zach saying, "Throughout history, many cultures have been plagued by versions of the Zozo Demon." Hey Zach. What? What cultures? Who? Tell us! So in the episode, the crew go to Oklahoma City, where they meet up with a person named Darren Evans. Darren is considered the expert on Zozo, or what he calls the Zozo phenomenon. He actually wrote a book on the topic called The Zozo Phenomenon in 2016, and before that, he worked on a movie called I Am Zozo in 2012. Now, this Zozo phenomenon really kind of got its kickstart on March 24th, 2009, when Darren posts his experience with a Ouija board to a forum called True Ghost Tales. During my experiences with Ouija boards, one particular spirit always seemed compelled to make its presence known. Its name is Zozo. Today, I refuse to even pronounce its name, as I believe the mere pronunciation of it can cause it to manifest itself. I was genuinely fascinated and startled by how many times Zozo showed up, even in many different states and many Ouija boards. So in this post, Darren mentions a lot of things, and some of the more severe things being that Zozo supposedly attacked his romantic partner and daughter. You can read this entire post on the Wayback Machine, and I'll have that linked in the sources below as well as on my website. So that post reached a lot of people. 440 people commented on it, and some were sharing their own stories revolving around Zozo. I live in Orlando, Florida, and the other day my friend and I were using the Ouija board. We used the Ouija board a lot, and we came upon a spirit. We asked its name, and it said Zozo. We kept on asking questions, and it tried to get out of the board by going down the alphabet. Then we got off. We didn't know what Zozo meant. It also kept on repeating Zozo again and again. She looked Zozo up and came upon this. Okay, this is a very, very true story. I was looking at Ouija tales of people, and then out of nowhere, my mouse started to move, and no one was here. It started to highlight words that didn't pay attention to what it said until the only thing I realized is that it highlighted Zozo possessed. Then up where you type the websites, it said you make out what that says? That's right, Zozo possess you. Can anyone help me? I'm very, very scared now. I too have had experiences with Zozo, but I am just now finding out that others have come in contact with the same spirit through the Ouija board. My experiences were all about 5 years ago, and I now refuse to touch are they just spelling it Ouija? Okay, touch a Ouija board. I would always play with my grandmother and husband on my grandmother's board. The board would only work if I was touching it with them, never without me. Every time I touched the board, Zozo would come through. Just like Darren's story. Nice at first, perhaps a little mischievous, and then Zozo started telling me specific things like, "I was with you in your red truck when you went to Ashley's house," and so on and so forth. Saying that Zozo was following me and always with me. This was all about 5 years ago and had left my mind until I got a call from my husband at work today, saying that he had talked to a coworker about his Ouija board experiences and that he shared my Zozo story with his coworker. His coworker told him that he had heard of a demon named Zozo and to do his research. So that's what I'm doing now, and came across this page. Does anyone know where I can find some good information other than personal stories? Now, people have researched this topic before and have gone looking for the earliest mention of Zozo, the Ouija board demon, online. And one way you can do this is by using the Google Advanced Search feature, which will allow you to put in your search and then filter it by year. And when people have done this, it shows that the earliest post of Zozo the Ouija board demon is from Darren Evans. First on a Led Zeppelin fan forum, and then shortly after it's on True Ghost Tales. And I think he gets a lot of heat from people who just stop there and say, it's showing that you are the first person to ever talk about it, therefore you made it up. Because believe what you will on if he made it all up or if he's the one who popularized it, but there is actually evidence that escapes Google's advanced search feature showing that people were mentioning a Zozo in relation to Ouija boards before his original post. Darren actually points this out on one of his websites, Darren Evans Paranormal, where he shows a screenshot from a Nigerian forum called Naraland, or Nairaland, I think. And this is what it says. Are Ouija boards fake? Have you contacted the dead? What happened? So, Ouija boards, talking boards. Have you used one? If so, what happened? Is it a load of crap? My friend used one and he said, I contacted a demon called Zozo. He wouldn't go away. Then the glass smashed. My friend never lies. Just what is it? Does it interfere with religion? Now this person only has a few posts on their profile, it looks like, and most of it does seem to be about Ouija boards. And I guess you could conspire that this is Darren Evans, but I don't know, there's no evidence to show that, and I just don't think that it's Darren. So I wanted to do some deeper research and see if I could find other examples of Zo or Zozo in relation to a Ouija board prior to Darren mentioning it on True Ghost Tales. And I actually found two examples. First, there was a metaphysical author in the 1950s. His name was George Hunt Williamson, and he was really into the occult and also really into flying saucers. He said that he could communicate with them. And he wrote a book mentioning that he had communicated with a Zo of Neptune using a Ouija board. Now, he didn't mention anything about demons or Zozo specifically, but just that Zo had come through a Ouija board, which I thought was interesting. I did also find some discussion in 2008 on unsolvedmysteries.com where a user was talking about Zozo the Ouija board demon. Some of the stories on this post, in fact, are really similar to some of the stories that Darren references finding in his original post. Or if you believe he made it all up, these could be Darren posting before he went on True Ghost Tales. Hi, Editing Jenny here. As I was going back on the website to get some screenshots of the comments, I actually found this comment from 2008 talking about a different website called I Was Abducted, where a user had posted about a Zozo that came through the Ouija board. And if this post could be verified, this would be possibly the oldest online post talking about Zozo from the Ouija board. But I tried the link that's in this post, and I also tried getting it to work on the Wayback Machine, and the website's just down. I cannot get this to work. So I cannot verify if this is in fact a real post. Also, something interesting to note is at the bottom, it's talking about possible other names for Zozo, and I remember seeing these specific names referenced in the comments on Darren's original post. So I do think that there is a strong connection between this post and Darren's original post. Not sure if it means that it is Darren or if it's just some of these ended up in the research of the people who commented on that post. But anyways, it was really interesting and just wanted to let you guys know. Hi, even later Editing Jenny here. I've actually already finished this video, but as I was doing research for a completely different video topic, I stumbled upon validation of this post. So on this blog called New England Folklore, I found this post talking about Zozo the demon in Massachusetts, which is also crazy because that is the state I live in, so that's a little close to home. And it's talking about Mona Kempka and how she had an experience in 1994 with a reptilian creature that she called Zozo. But this post does a little digging and finds out that she talks about her experience with this alien creature, but only attaches the name Zozo to it after Darren Evans has gone public with his Zozo experience. So I guess we can say that yes, this post in this story is real and older than Zozo, but attaching the name Zozo only happened after Darren had shared his experience. So I guess we can say that this post has thoroughly been debunked. I personally don't think that Darren is creating all these accounts, creating all these stories, and posting them in all these different places, but I guess we'll never really know for sure. Although I can understand the doubts surrounding Darren's story. Some have actually noticed discrepancies in the story that he has told when he's told them in different platforms. An example being about some specific marks that Darren mentions being in one place on the Ouija board in his original story, and then later when he retells it, mentions it being in a different place completely. So I found this information on an article on the Paranormal Scholar website, but the page and article had actually been taken down for some reason, so it is on the Wayback Machine, which I have linked in the sources below. So as I mentioned earlier, Darren has essentially become the spokesperson for the Zozo phenomenon, and he has some websites dedicated to the topic, which I would like to take a look at with you. Hello from webcam angle Jenny. So I want to take a look at both of these blogs. So there are two websites, the first being Darren Evans Paranormal and the second being Zozo the Ouija Spirit, and both of these are on fire. I have taken a gander at these before, but a lot of information comes up when you search for the origins of Zozo, so I wanted to see what Darren's original research had to say. So this website seems to not have been updated in a bit. The first thing I'm seeing is that there's this quote from John Zaffis. The name has come up time and time again in my investigations, which I've seen this actually. It can be found on Darren's YouTube channel, which I'll have linked in the sources. Okay, so here at the bottom is questions and answers with Darren Evans, where it looks like he's talking about his theories and research. How far back does this phenomena appear to have been reported? That is still under investigation. Research on the mysterious word Zo indicates that it could be a religious term used in early African voodoo, see article above, while contact with Zozo appears on the surface to be largely as a result of Ouija boards. In my research, I have uncovered evidence prior to the advent of the modern Ouija. Zozo is listed in 18th century French dictionary as one of the demons responsible for a severe possession of a young girl in 1816. In another book, written in 1906, that details Greek tourism at the time, mentions that Zozo is a nickname or other term to describe the demon Pazuzu. Can this name give us clues to its origin? So I actually do know about the French Infernal dictionary, and we'll talk about that in a bit, but this tidbit right here about the Greek tourism book, it intrigues me because as far as I know, there is no source that I could find that directly correlates the name Zozo with Pazuzu.
So I did reach out to Darren, and he replied to me after I'd filmed this saying that he cannot remember the name of that Greek tourism book that mentions Zozo being a nickname for Pazuzu. But he also mentioned that he does not believe there is a connection between the two anymore, which is great. But unfortunately, a lot of mainstream media still runs with this idea.
Okay, we're gonna go back to normal camera view. Okay, I realized that I've had these up like the entire video and they're kind of distracting. I'm so sorry. We're having a background change. So this whole Zozo and Pazuzu thing, Pazuzu was a real deity for the ancient Mesopotamian people. Pazuzu was a god known for being evil, but there's evidence that he was also regarded as like a protective entity. Where a lot of you might know Pazuzu from is from The Exorcist, which I think it's telling that Pazuzu is the named demon in a very famous horror movie that involves a demon coming out of the Ouija board, and people say that Zozo is Pazuzu, but I cannot find any evidence to ever suggest that Zozo was a nickname for Pazuzu, outside of like any mention about Zozo the Ouija board demon. So an interesting tidbit, actually, I was able to go to the Ouija board museum in Salem, Massachusetts, which was super cool, and I loved it a lot. I highly suggest you go visit if you can. And I was able to talk to the owner, and he was showing me a original script of The Exorcist that he was gifted. And he was talking about how somebody, I think related to the production or like the writing of the script, told him that the reason Pazuzu was added to the script was because they needed the demon to have more purpose and more of a character. I'm paraphrasing here, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said. So if we're searching for the origins of Zozo, like in relation to Ouija boards and the paranormal and the supernatural, we should try to go as far back as possible. And one of the most popular sources that is cited, and one that we've already talked about a little bit, is the Infernal Dictionary. So the Infernal Dictionary is a French book written by, and I'm going to butcher this name, Jacques-Colin de Plancy, and it was published in 1818. It lists many names of demons and organizes them in a hierarchy. This book has been edited and republished so many times that it was actually hard to find an original scan of the area that supposedly mentions Zozo, but I did. In a section about possessions, it talks about a girl who was supposedly possessed by Zozo. So, solved, right? Zozo, a demon, mentioned in 1818. Wrong. The passage says, the town of Tilly, 3 leagues from Amiens, gave in 1816 the spectacle of a girl who wanted to pass herself off as possessed. She was, she said, in the power of 3 demons, Mimi, Zozo, and Crapulet. An honest ecclesiastic warned the authorities, who recognized that this girl was ill. She was admitted to a hospital, and no more was said about the possession. A lot of people see Zozo mentioned in the Infernal Dictionary, but they don't look any further to realize that the passage is actually saying that in this instance, Zozo didn't exist. It was probably due to mental illness. So a lot of this origin info that we've been talking about was either overlooked or was not researched when Ghost Adventures did their episode. And it always seems like when something appears on Ghost Adventures, it is suddenly all over YouTube. There are so many videos titled with Zozo. Now, I unfortunately forced myself to watch all of the ghost hunting videos to see what kind of information was being spread about Zozo. And to my disappointment, I found out that a lot of the videos... Demons. Is it demons or is it tape? The world will never truly know. Better. Okay. To my disappointment, a lot of them have Zozo in the title when there is literally no mention of Zozo anywhere in the video. I am looking at you, Twin Paranormal. So I ended up watching around 9 videos that were ghost hunting or paranormal investigation related that had to do with Zozo. So let's look at the stats. I found that the most common Zozo fact that was shared in these videos was that saying the name out loud was bad and could summon it. Now, a lot of these videos actually mention that you had to say it 3 times, which Darren in his original post says saying Zozo gives it power, but he does not say saying it 3 times like Bloody Mary gives it power. The next most popular was that there were alternative names for Zozo, such as Zaza, Mama, Oz, etc. And then the next being that Zozo could cause a person serious physical and mental harm. The least common idea was actually that Zozo was Pazuzu, but it was still presented in a few of them as fact. And then there were some like other one-off things that were mentioned that I just didn't feel like were big enough to put in the stats. So I know that 9 videos is actually like a rather small sample size, but these videos have decent views. The combined total of all the videos I watched was 8 million views. That is a lot of ears listening to what these YouTubers have to say. It's understandable to want to share folklore or rumors that you've heard. It just kind of shifts to be a little more serious when we're talking about the afterlife and the paranormal. This is a really personal topic for so many people. Others have mentioned this before, but people who are in a vulnerable space, people who are either struggling with their mental health or maybe even suffering from religious psychosis will have trouble separating what is reality from what is fiction. Spreading misinformation or spreading information that you have not thoroughly vetted with research as a fact can be dangerous. It can make people think that their lives are in danger or that their home is not safe for them anymore. I think it's fine to share folklore or talk about stories that you've heard in the paranormal space, but do it responsibly. Just do your research and be honest about what you find. I have to admit, like after all of this research, I still found it really interesting that there are a lot of people seemingly genuine in their stories coming out with experiences about a Zozo showing on their Ouija board. And I kind of have a 2-part theory on this. The first being that Zozo is caused by the ideomotor effect. And people who are going into a Ouija board session who know about Zozo, have maybe heard about it, seen the Ghost Adventures episode, watched one of these YouTube videos, has that in the back of their mind. So when they go to play with the Ouija board, their subconscious is thinking about Zozo and brings it up on the board. But for the camp of people who have never heard about Zozo, have no idea, and they play with the Ouija board and Zozo comes up, my theory is that, well, usually you play with a Ouija board with somebody else. Very rarely are you doing it by yourself. And I think that when you're playing with somebody else, the most convenient places for you to bring your hands are going to be Z and O, or just the edges of the board in general. So, to test this theory, I conducted an experiment. Most stories infer that 1 or 2 people were using the Ouija board at the time that Zozo appeared. So, I gathered a group of folks with no knowledge of Zozo to use a Ouija board with a partner. Each pair would use the Ouija board in 3 different sessions. The first session would be sat across the board top to bottom. Then the second would have them across the board side to side, the last position being both in front of the board. It was surprisingly hard to find people to do this Ouija board experiment. A lot of my friends either don't believe in the paranormal or like super skeptical, and then I'll say, okay, well, do you want to play with this Ouija board for an experiment? And they're like, actually, I'm not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. It's like, do you believe or do you not? Unsurprisingly to me, nobody in the test had the planchette move for them. Could this be a result of the experiment being in a too like clinical or test-like area? Like the vibes weren't right, so they didn't get into it? Maybe. So I am not a scientist, and this was far from a perfect scientific experiment, but I still wanted to try to test my theory and see if I could learn anything from it. And I did. After a few of the sessions, a few people came up to me mentioning how their arms were really tired by the 3rd session, because at that point they had their arms lifted for like 30 minutes or so. And a lot of people tend to use the Ouija board for quite a while. And now I'm thinking that if you're sitting across from somebody on the Ouija board and your arms are tired, you're subconsciously going to be bringing them back closer to you to rest. And if you're in the right position, that's going to be the end of the boards, which could result in it landing in Zozo. So I did look into some other sources talking about this and tried to see if I could find any other tests involving a Ouija board. I highly suggest checking out this article from the Skeptical Inquirer. And I also found a test where it was conducted with 40 participants in 2018, and they found that the results were heavily skewed depending on if the person that was conducting the test believed in the afterlife or not. Both of these will be linked in the description with the rest of the sources. I think Zozo is a great example of modern cultural folklore that is shared through storytelling. I think that we can forget how so much of our information could be fed from oral storytelling or our friends sharing their stories. I may not think that Zozo is real or powerful, but the effect of storytelling is. That is going to do it for this video. All the links for the sources I used in this video will be linked in the description and on my website. That is gonna do it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Jesus! No! And actually, I find that quite offensive. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean... You Jenny Twigs? Yeah? You summoned me, by name, like 52 times. No I didn't. I didn't mean to. You know, I could have been doing way more important things this whole time. There's like 4 frat parties messing with a Ouija board, but instead I came here. You know what? This isn't worth it. I'm just gonna go pull some poltergeist stuff in the dorm room. Bye. 52 times. 52.
You really look like a demon.